Hi everybody! You're probably watching this tutorial today because you purchased a kit that looks something like this. And much to your family's dismay, when you opened it, there wasn't a pizza, it was a door hanger kit. So you're going to want to go ahead and open your kit. But first, you want to make sure that you protect the surface that you'll be working on, because if you're an artist, you're a messy artist. And therefore, don't wear anything that you really want to save. Like, don't wear your Sunday best. Wear something that you really don't care about, because you'll end up with paint on your arms. I guarantee it. If you are truly an artist, and it's okay to get messy, that's all right. That's why we are here. So when you open up your kit, you're going to pull out your 16-inch round door hanger. And this is a nice door hanger. It's nice and thick, comes with pre-drilled holes, and that's where we're going to put our cord once we're done creating our kit. With your purchase of your kit, you also had the option to select any one of my brand new line of decoupage papers. So for today's door hanger tutorial, I'm going to go ahead and use Cover Me In Daisies because we are currently in the throes of winter and I'm super excited for spring to get here. That darn groundhog said it's not going to anytime soon. So I'm going to create a spring door hanger in preparation for hopefully spring at some point. So that is whatever choice you made for your decoupage paper. It is on the rice paper. They feature my original designs, and they are painted on vintage music sheets and novel pages. But yeah, so whatever one you chose, and maybe you're, it's fall and you're getting ready for Christmas and you chose a Christmas one, that's fine. Just know that when I created this, we were coming out of winter hopefully soon, and we're welcoming spring. So that's why I chose this one. But the nice thing is you get to choose whichever one you think works best for you. So for my design, the options are endless, obviously. You've got a blank slate, literally, and you have a paper to get you started. So you kind of have to think about what you might want yours to look like. I have decided that I'd like to cut my design in half and put the decoupage paper at the bottom half, and then maybe some wording like welcome or something like that at the top when I add my twine and possibly a bow. The bow is not included. There is a bow included, but it's not like a big poofy bow. So if you'd like something more like that, you're gonna have to make it yourself. But that's okay because you're creative, you can do that. So the first thing I want to do, since I'm cutting my design in half and I want to paint half and put the decoupage on half, I'm going to use painter's tape. And painter's tape is pretty key here because it's made to pull up eventually, which is nice because you don't want it sticking fast. You don't want it pulling your wood door hanger apart. So one thing to make certain of when you are taping off your design, I'm not a measurer. I'm sure there's a way to measure down from the holes to make sure that this is straight. I eyeball it. So I just kind of line up my holes to where I think the door hanger is straight for my eyeballs. And then I'm going to tape it off so that I can work on the bottom half first. So I think that looks about straight there. And you know what? If I'm off just slightly, you're not going to be able to tell. But when you press your tape down, if you're using tape because you're doing a half and half or a 3/4 and a quarter, whatever the design, whether you're going vertically, horizontally, just make sure that I'm going to be painting down here. So I want to seal this edge. So I'm just going to go along and press it a couple of times to make sure that it's sealed. Now, with any of my designs, you can put it on. I could just go ahead and put it on. I have a fuzzy stuck here. I'm going to paint mine, but you could just stick it on the wood. It's a nice light wood. But to get the true colors that are on here, you want to put white behind it. And, you know, if you had a darker shade, I should have brought something here to show you, but if you had a darker shade behind it, it would just mute down the colors just a little bit. But I'd like the colors to be pretty true to what I have printed. So I'm just going to use acrylic paint, and you can get this at any craft store. You can use chalk paint. You can use whatever kind of paint you'd like, but I usually use acrylic or chalk. This time I'm using acrylic. I'm just going to go ahead and squeeze it onto my board because I'm just doing a solid white here just to get started with my decoupage design. I'm going to choose a large brush. You can choose to use whatever brush you'd like. But I'm going to choose a large brush. You can tell this is one of my favorites. I use it a lot. And if you're someone who does craft often, you probably also have a favorite. All right, so I just have my jar of water here close by. I did not bring my coffee down with me today because I tend to stick my brush in my coffee. So if you're gonna do that, put a lid on your coffee. All right, so I'm just gonna go ahead, make sure you can see here, and I'm just going to paint the white. And I have a little bit of a glob. If you've had paint for a while, sometimes it gets globs. I've got lots and lots of paints all over the place. So some of my paints are a little bit older than others. It doesn't make them unusable. It just means that you have to be more careful when you are using them to make sure that you don't have globs, because if you have globs in your paint, your decoupage paper will not lay flat. I'm just going to add a little bit more water to this so that it goes a little bit further. You're going to want to take it all the way out to the ends, and of course being careful to get it along the tape. So thank you so much for your purchase of your art kit. I am a small business. I didn't introduce myself. I'm so sorry. How rude of me. I'm Virginia, and I am the owner, artist, and designer of 13 Design Art, and I create one-of-a-kind decoupage papers based on my artwork. And I do all of my artwork, as I said previously, on vintage music sheets and novel pages, just to make my designs a little bit different from anyone else's. I do not like AI art. I know some people are okay using AI art or bits and pieces of it. I don't. I'm very anti as far as artwork. And, you know, if you're not, well, then that's your choice. I am. So all of my stuff is original. All right, so once you have a nice coat down, you can see I just kind of went back and forth. This doesn't have to be perfect because I am going to decoupage on top of it. But I just wanted to make certain that I get the true colors of my decoupage paper. Now this is going to take a little bit to dry, so I'm going to go ahead and use my heat gun to dry it. If you have a hair dryer, works just as well. I just happen to have a heat gun. So I'm going to go ahead and just dry this so we can continue to move on. Sometimes when I do tutorials, I have things kind of set up in stages so I can grab the next door hanger and move on. This time I just kind of wanted to do it in real time. Depending on the design that you are creating, you may or may not be doing this step. You may or may not want to paint on your door hanger. I just am giving you this option, and I will show you how to apply the decoupage. You can do whatever design you'd like. And also, like I said, it depends on the time of year as well, as to which decoupage paper you will have selected. So if you've selected a seasonal one, if it's the fall, if you've got pumpkins, or if you've got one of my Christmas papers, one of the winter papers, then you are obviously in a different part of the year than I am when I am creating this video for you. But I wanted to create this video tutorial so that you would have an idea of how to go ahead and put the decoupage paper on. If you are not doing this step, you can go ahead and fast forward me till I get to the paper and showing you how to apply the paper. But the heat guns work really well. You just have to keep them moving. If you hold it in one space too long, it can make the paint bubble. I speak from experience. I used to do a lot of furniture, and I was almost done with the piece, and then I bubbled the paint pretty bad because I held the heat gun in one spot for too long. I'll never do that again. That's the nice thing about mistakes. You learn from them. So I won't ever do that again. Okay, so I'm just gonna touch it here and make sure it's just a little bit damp yet because I did add quite a bit of water. So I just wanna make sure that it is as dry as possible. If you are doing this and you've decided to paint a dark color on the half where you're putting your decoupage, if you are painting, you are going to want to make certain to use Mod Podge, and I buy mine in gallon size, Mod Podge, and do a thin coat and let that dry over top of your dark paint, because you don't want the dark paint to seep into your decoupage paper, which can happen if you don't seal it, or if it's like these are matte finish. If you're using a dark color with a matte finish, if it's got a coating in it, a clear coat in it, built into the paint, then you're fine. But it's just to keep it from seeping into your paper. Since I'm using the white, I won't be doing that. All right, I'm gonna turn this off, and it has to run for a little bit to cool down. So I'm just gonna sit that on the floor. All right, so I'm going to be using, as I said, this decoupage paper. See, oh, here it is, my water pen. So I really love the water pen. If you don't have a water pen, that's okay. You can use a small brush and just dip it into water, get it wet, and use it, but you'll have to keep dipping it to get the same effect that I'm going to get from my water pen. So water pen is just a pen, it's a brush with a water chamber. I don't know if you can see the water in there. You take the top off, you fill it up, and then it has a brush at the end where the water comes down, goes into the brush, and squeezes out. Now mine's getting kind of low, so I don't know how long this will last. I might end up having to use the wet brush after all. It's called not being prepared. So I'm just going to go around the edges of this design. I should actually see how much of it I'm going to need. I'm going to go around the edges of this just because this makes it a softer edge and a little bit easier to decoupage on and blend in. So I think it's going to go right about here. So I'm just going to press with my thumb around the edge just so I kind of have a general idea. It doesn't have to be perfect. I just kind of want a general idea. Can you see the fold there? Yeah, maybe. There. Just so I kind of know where this is gonna go. It doesn't have to be perfect. I'm not doing anything with that right now. Right now I'm going to go around the edge with my brush, and as I've told people before in my tutorials, it is water. If you get too much, which I got quite a bit here, you can just let it dry, or you can go ahead and carefully tear it. What the water pen allows you to do is a controlled tear, so that you're not tearing into the design. What's wrong with my mouth today? At any point. I'm gonna try to do this up off the table so you can see. Hopefully you can see the water soaking in. So, and if I wasn't in a big hurry, I certainly would take more time, but I'm going to go ahead, and you can lay it down and tear. I do better by squeezing it between my two fingers. And like I said, the whole purpose of this is to get a nice soft edge. If you do not want a soft edge, you can just use scissors. That will work just fine. You're just going to get a more blunt edge than the water pen. I personally enjoy the softer edge that the water pen allows for. And sometimes, just gonna throw that on the floor, sometimes you might get a weird bump here because it didn't tear quite straight. It's okay. You still have wet paper there. You can go back and tear off the bumps or the weird angles that you might end up with. Or you can re-wet it and try again. But you can see here, because my papers are printed on rice paper, it ends up with a real nice soft edge. Hopefully you can see that against my black apron here. it gets a real nice soft edge. So I actually like to pull the fibers outward to really get that soft edge. So I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to do this to the rest of the paper here. And again, if I get too much water, I can let it dry, or I can just go ahead and carefully tear. That one went a lot better, actually. I do better when I keep things up off the table. I think on the table, it soaks through the paper and then hits the table and kind of spreads a little bit more. So when I hold it up, it kind of keeps more of a line. So I'm just going to go ahead and continue to tear. Again, I just like to squeeze the paper between my fingers. Some people like to lay it down and do it. But what happens is it allows for a nice soft edge, and my intent is to use this blue shade that's in the background and blend my paper into my door hanger. So I want to make sure that it's a soft edge so that it blends a little bit easier. And again, pulling out, I want to look and see, is there any weird lumps or bumps that I don't want? I think that's pretty good. I like how that looks. Something you always want to do is make sure that it fits your intended space. And that's generally true if you're doing something that's a little bit smaller, maybe like a canvas, jewelry box, something like that. On this, there's quite a bit of space except for the part that's going to hang off the bottom. So it looks pretty good there. So I'm going to cap my water pen, and I need to remember to fill it up some more for next time. I'm going to set that aside. If you were using a paintbrush and water to do your wet line on your paper, then you're going to set that aside. And if you were using scissors because you wanted a blunt edge or a blade, you're definitely going to want to close those up and set them aside. So I should probably turn it this way so you can see what I'm doing here. So the next step is to use Mod Podge. And with the Mod Podge, we're going to attach the decoupage design. So this is how you would attach any decoupage design to any surface. You're going to put a thin layer of Mod Podge down, and while it is still wet, you have a little bit of time to play, but not much, you're going to stick your paper on. So I'm going to demonstrate that. I choose to use this brand just because I can buy it in gallon size, and I prefer the matte finish or the satin finish. They are the two most forgiving. You can use the gloss, but it's a little bit more tricky because you can see all the brush strokes. You've got to work pretty hard to get that looking just right. All right, I'm gonna clean out my brush that I used for the white paint because, again, it is my super messy brush. It is one of my favorite brushes, which is so very obvious. I use this brush for everything. It's just good for everything. All right, and then I had a little bit of Mod Podge left. I call it Mod Podge. I know it's Mod Podge. It's just easier to say that. I had a little bit left from one of my classes, so I brought it home because I don't like to waste, and figured, well, I can use that. So that's what's in this cup here. So this is, because it's from one of my classes, it's a little bit thicker. So I'm just going to add a little bit of water to it to thin it down just a little bit. And I'm also going to use a damp brush because that also helps for a thin layer. You don't want thick because that will make the paper wrinkle, crease, bubble. So to start, I'm going to do a thin layer across this entire lower part because this is where my decoupage is going to go. My decoupage paper is going to go. And because it's just a design that's going to be sticking on the front of this, essentially, you're gluing it to the front. You don't need to get too crazy. You don't need to use super glue. If you don't have Mod Podge, I have heard that a watered down Elmer's glue can also work. I have never tried that. I need to try that to see if that actually works, because if you're in a pinch, that might be something to consider. I obviously am never in a pinch because I have a gallon size of Mod Podge. So with the kit, you will have received a bottle of Mod Podge. Okay, so then pretty quickly, I want to bring this here, and I want to make sure this is straight because I'd like my design to be fairly straight. And I want to leave a little bit of room above it with a little bit of the paint showing so that I have room to blend. Okay, so this is a fairly small design. I'm sure you've seen people use decoupage papers on dressers and things. For something that size, I would probably use a little bit different technique. There's a wet technique that I'm happy to show you in another tutorial. But I like to use just my fingers to smooth this out because I want the soft edge to really show. I'm just going to kind of take my paintbrush and go around the edge here and kind of pull those fibers outward. That just helps it lay a little bit flatter, which will come in handy when we are blending. I got some sort of little, what that is. I want to make sure that it's a nice flat surface. So you're just going to continue to rub. Make sure that there's no bubbles or bumps, and you can really feel that with the hand. There are little rubber or plastic scrapers with like a felt edge that you can use. I've used them, they're nice, but I prefer to use my finger because then I can really feel to see if is there, you know, any wrinkles or bumps. And at this point, the top is just paper. You haven't put another coat over top, so you can easily do that. If you can't feel it, you can kind of pick it up and get it in the light and look and see, do I see any bubbles? The nice thing about a hairdryer or a heat gun is when you use that, it tends to shrink the paper back a little bit, and that also helps pull out any bumps, lumps, or bubbles. So I'm going to go ahead and use the heat gun, but the whole time I'm going to keep rubbing, right? Just because I want to make sure there's no lumps or bumps. Move my paintbrush out of the way so that I don't accidentally dry that. This is a pretty foolproof way to get any of your lumps or bumps out. Again, hair dryers work really well too. Don't hold your fingers under the heat gun because that will burn them, and that's not good. We don't want to do that. I like to do a circular motion just to make sure that I'm getting it all nice and flat. You end up with some bubbles or wrinkles. It's never really bothered me. It's just a few small ones because you are making something handmade. This is not factory made. So little things like that, you might look at it as a mistake or a screw up or goof up. I look at it as character. It really makes the piece stand out because it is handmade, it is special. So that's just my opinion. I was the same way when I used to redo furniture. I didn't mind seeing brush strokes because if I wanted a factory finish, I would have bought a factory-made piece. If I wanted a piece with absolutely no flaws, I would go buy it from a manufacturer. That's not what we're going for here. And crafting should be fun, enjoyable, not stressful. And decoupage is not stressful. I think decoupage has gotten a really bad rap for being difficult. I think some of the more difficult papers are the really thin papers, like the tissue papers. Some people like to use napkins. Those are much harder to use. And there are tricks to getting that a little bit a better result. But mine are printed on rice paper, which is thin, but it is not ultra thin. So it's a little bit easier to work with. Okay. And then I'm just going to try to dry some of the glue on the outside here so that I can put the top coat on. You don't necessarily have to put the top coat on at this point. I prefer to put the top coat on. Well, I mean, I guess I could do it without, just to show you without. So if you put the top coat on prior to trying to blend in the background color, if that is what you choose to do for your design, it just makes it a little bit easier if something's not turning out the way you'd like to wipe that off. Maybe I won't. Maybe I'll just do it right on the paper so that it's less steps for you. And it's certainly, you're able to do it whatever way is easiest for you, whichever way is more enjoyable. The whole point is enjoy this. This is fun. We're crafting. If you're crafting with friends, that's great. Have a sip of wine. Enjoy. If you're crafting by yourself, that's great too. Thanks for joining. But I just like to get this dried down. So I did add a little bit of water to this, which makes it a little bit more wet and a little bit longer to dry. Let me turn that off. Again, it has to run down, it has to cool down. If you're using a hair dryer, we won't have that. Remember I said about getting messy? You might get it on your shirt. Don't wear anything good. Don't wear anything good. Let me put that back there. That's my little pink pile back there. All right, so then I think I'm actually going to tear this off first. Let me set this aside here. I'm going to tear this aside off first. And I am going to use, I'm going to show you with the wet brush actually. This is a good way to tear off an edge. I want my design to go all the way to the edge. So I'm just going to tear it where I had kind of scored it before to give myself an idea of where my design would end. This is the same result as the paint pen. I could just use a water pen. I could just use my water pen. I'm just going to use, you see? And then you're just going to very gently go around and tear. And then I have one other thing we're going to use to really get a finish down here on this end. And this is if your design goes off the edge. Now, with the bottom, you can see it kind of hangs off a little bit here. You can see I can either glue it down or I can cut it off. I could use a blade or I could use this thing I have down here. All right, I have a sand block. I like to use a finer grit. This is a little bit coarser grit than I like to use. But I don't see my fine grit sandpaper. The higher the number, the finer grit that it is. I'm just going to gently go on the edge. And all that does is basically cut it. Careful if you're a messy crafter, paint stuck to you, and you could end up transferring it to another area of your design that you didn't really want it on. Again, I speak from experience. That's okay, we can turn it into something positive. So, if you can see, the way that I'm doing it is to take over the edge like this, and you can see the little pieces. The pieces are kind of just falling off into my lap. And that's just kind of cutting the paper. Again, thank you so much for purchasing this kit from my small business. I like to put together kits so that people can craft at home, craft with friends, craft when it's convenient for them. Okay, so here's my little mess that just kind of went off. You can see now it goes around the edge. I'll show you from the back side. See? So, like I said, you can either glue it down or you can do it that way. I'm just going to dump my little mess on my floor. I will vacuum it up later, I promise. That's my little, like, pile back there. All right. Then I'm going to leave my tape on. I didn't clean this out after the last time I used it. I usually wait until I have quite a bit of paint in there. It is dry, but I didn't clean it out. Okay. So I'm going to put some of the shades that I feel are in this blue here, and paint is not included with your kit because there's no way for me to know which design that you will have chosen. So hopefully you have just some little bottles of this sort of acrylic paint at home. Most people do. And this is only if you are intending to blend your design. Okay. And I want a little bit of this brighter blue as well. Now, I'm going to also put some orange in my dish. Why? Why orange? Where do you see orange other than kind of in the center here of the flowers? Well, if you look at a color wheel, you see where blue is located at the top here. If you're trying to mute down a color, and although this blue seems bright, it is muted down. So instead of using blue straight out of the bottle, which I rarely ever do, I'm going to mute it down. And you would mute it down with the color that is exactly opposite of it on the color wheel. And that color is orange. So it doesn't take much to mute it down. So I'm just going to put a little tiny drop in there. And if I need more, I just don't like to waste paint. Don't like to waste things, and it bothers me when I have paint left in my container here. All right, so for this look that I have going on here, I want to stipple, and stippling is when you're just dotting basically. You can use a brush with firm bristles. You can use a foam brush. You could even use a paper towel, which I might do out here a little bit further. I could even start with that just to show you. So when you're using a paper towel to blend your color, and you don't use a whole paper towel, you won't need that. You know how they have designs printed on them. Make sure it's nothing real deep or graphic. I'm actually going to turn it from the side where the design is kind of pressed in to the other side, because I don't want that design to show up on my piece, because it will transfer. And what I do is I just kind of wad it up and I get it a little wet, just damp. You don't want it soaking wet. You just want a little damp, and that's just so the paint doesn't all soak into it. Okay, and then you could open it up and re-wad it. And you'll need to do this several times. If you're using a paper towel, your hands will get messy. It's gonna happen. All right, so I'm gonna show you this way first. So I'm trying to get this light blue color, which I know this one is a little too light, but I'm going to start there. And I'm just going to dab, right? Dab, dab, dab. And as you get closer here, you can see it's not exactly the color, so I'm going to get some of this light blue. This is going to make such a pretty door hanger because this blue is just so pretty. Then I'm going to get some of the bright blue, and I'll tell you this right now, and some white. There's no wrong way to do this. What you're going to do is keep doing it. I'm going to add just a smidge of the orange. You're going to keep doing it until it turns into the color that you want. And you also don't want to keep your paper in the same angle. You're going to want to turn it every once in a while. Otherwise, you're going to basically get a print of the creases in your folded paper towel. And you certainly don't want that. And then occasionally, you're going to want to open it up and re-wad it, because you don't want the same print over and over. Again, be careful. You're getting paint on your hands. Don't touch your paper. Pick up some more here. Just go around. And I'm also going to take the color and just put it slightly over the edge of my paper because I want to blend the two. I'm never going to get exactly this blue. So I want to carry it over onto my paper a little bit so that it will eventually blend in nicely. Can you see what I'm doing here? So that's where we're at, and we're just going to keep doing that. I'm going to do it in the same order that I did before. I'm going to use this medium kind of blue. Over here so you can see. I get going sometimes and I'm moving over and over and over, and before you know it, you can't even see what I'm doing. So sorry about that if that happens. I'm actually going to take it over the white edge of the paper as well because I want the blue to fill up to the line. And I'm taking it over the paper. Again, I'm starting to get the same kind of look, so I'm just going to re-wad it here. And like I said, you were gonna get messy. Art is messy, art is fun. Get some blue, get some white, and mix them, and then just a spot of orange. If I get too much orange, right, and it's a little too muted, I'm just gonna add a little bit more blue. No big deal. And what happens if I get it too muted and then I'm over here doing this and it's not the shade I want? Well, we're just gonna keep layering and layering and layering until we get the shade that we want. This one because it's a little bit more muted than my last one. It's getting real flat, so we're just going to keep doing this. Some more of the light blue. And I start with a little bit of paint in my tray. Again, I don't like to waste. And I'm just trying to get the larger area outside of my design. And again, slightly going over the edge of the paper. Can you see there's where my paper edge is, and I'm just filling it in. This. And it's just layer, 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 layer. That's all we're doing. It's just layering again and again and again and again. Now, I just want to show you with the brush. So can you see it's starting to blend? Do you see where I'm going with this? And again, there's no wrong way. Sometimes you might want to not do a blended color. You might want to do something completely opposite, and that's okay too. So with stippling with the brush, it's the same idea. You're just using the brush. And sometimes this helps get along the edge a little bit better. And especially if you're getting into a tighter space like this has with the flower petals. I don't mind that it goes over a little bit, but I don't want to cover the flower petals. And again, I'm just going to go over onto the paper to really blend these colors because I'm not going to get the exact color. And I'm okay with some of the edge, the soft edge that we created earlier showing, because I think it's really pretty. Put a little bit more blue. I even brought some gray over because I wasn't quite sure. I didn't put it in my tray, but I wasn't quite sure if I would need that or not. And if there's any of these items that you don't have, as far as like this brush, like something with a thicker, sturdier bristle, just use the paper towels. It works just fine. Just gonna keep going over. And you want to carry it out onto the larger area as well, because you want it to look as though it is part of that. If this is the design idea that you're going for. Again, if you're doing something totally different, maybe you don't want to blend it, then don't blend it. Just decoupage it on and maybe paint the top half, and it'll look just as good. Decoupage is very easy, very fun, and my intent with my designs is just to help enhance your own designs. So use my papers to help create your design. And your door hanger isn't going to look anything like mine. Yours is going to look like your door hanger. Again, I'm just going to take it out into the larger area a little bit. If it gets a little too bright, I'll add a little bit more of the orange as well. And you will quickly find out if you're a loud stippler or a quiet stippler. I am a loud stippler. I'm like a violent stippler. And if you need to pause the video at any time to take a snack break or a wine break or just a break, you need to walk away, the kids are hungry, whatever you have to do, this kit is intended for you to use at your leisure. Some more with the darker shade. I'm going to add some white, some blue, hope you can see this, and just a smidgy bit of the orange. I just want it to be real light, so I'm being really random, and I'm very light with it too. I just very loosely hold the brush. Again, it's not going to be perfect because it's not store-bought. I'm just trying to go around the whole edge to make sure most of the surface is covered, so we're not seeing the white behind. And that's looking pretty good. Almost got wet paint on myself. You can see it's really blending in nicely. So, because of time, I'm just going to go ahead and dry this real quick so that I can show you the next step. I'm going to look into, I think they have other drying guns or whatever, just for crafting. This is kind of like a commercial grade heat gun. I can get this as dry as possible. Again, keeping it moving. Whether it's a hair dryer or a heat gun, you're going to keep it moving at all times, so we don't want to bubble paint. Paint too, because I don't want to accidentally draw my paint out, in case I need a little bit more. Let's get my moving. And the paint that's onto over the edge of your paper and onto your paper just a little bit might take a little bit longer to dry because it is on paper. It will soak in a little bit. You always want to check back on my web page, my website, for my new designs. I'm constantly creating new designs, and I have some really great ones coming up. As soon as they're available, I usually make the announcement on my Facebook page, and then I release it for sale. And as with all of my kits, you get to choose a decoupage paper to go with it. I have a journal art kit and I have a canvas art kit currently. By the time you watch this, I may have others. Just doesn't seem to want to dry too quickly. Let's try them. Turn that off. Set it aside. Let it do its thing. Okay, looks pretty dry. What do you think? Looks pretty good, right? So the next thing I'm going to do is add a layer of Mod Podge. Here's the other half of my paper that I did not use for my blotting. And when you're blotting or stippling, maybe you do both, maybe you prefer one over the other. So this last bit, we're going to have, sometimes like to squirt the surface to wet it a little bit. We'll see how this goes. I might need to squirt it so it's a little bit smoother. I'm going to add just a little bit of water, again, just because I need it a little bit thinner. I used this for my last class. Again, just a thin coat. We don't want to get crazy thick. We don't want to get crazy wet. We want it to nice, even brush strokes. Nice, even brush strokes. If you see any little bits and pieces that you're picking up, go ahead and fix those, because that happens. Whether it's the glue or whether you picked up a little blob of something off your workspace, it happens. As clean as I try to make my workspace, things like that still happen. It's okay. If you do have to pick something up, just make sure you go back over so it's a nice smooth surface. And this will give it a real finished look as well. Mod Podge also helps make the piece, it's more protected and also water resistant, not waterproof. So if you are hanging this piece eventually outdoors, please do so on a protected porch. If it's a door, it's on a porch with a roof, or oops, that was my AirPods case. One little piece of fuzzy something there. There we go. Yeah, so it's able to be hung outside, just not in the direct weather. Okay, I'm just going to take my hand and go along the edge to kind of scoop up any additional. And now, even though it's cooling down, I'm going to use the gun. It's just blowing cool air now, but I want to try to dry it. Oh, there we go. Now I'll turn this on. Not hotter. Oh yeah, that's what we want. And I'm just going to dry it real quick so that we can move on to the next. And I'm going to add some writing. You can use stencils. Where do you use stencils? You can use stencils over there. You can use stencils. You can handwrite a word. You can use. Sometimes they have the words out in wood. You can just glue that on. So there's lots of different ways to do this. I generally like to handwrite going to do that today. Because I'd like to get this done. We've already been going about 50 minutes, so I'm definitely going to take it over an hour. But I do want to give you just like a general feel of how to use your door hanger. And if you have any questions, you are certainly welcome to send me a message. You can send me a private message on my Facebook page, 13 Design Art. You can send me an email to 13designart@gmail.com, or you can go to my website and send me a message that way, www.13designart.com. So there are many different ways that you can send me a question. I usually see them within 24 hours. I try to get back to you as quickly as I possibly can. And if I happen to be looking at my phone at the moment, I might get back to you a whole lot quicker. It all depends. A couple of little spots here, just but this is dry enough for me to take my hand over and see that it is nice and smooth. Again, keeping the heat on. Like I said, the matte finish or satin finish nail polish is the most pretty. Let's put this up here and show you. Pretty great, huh? All right, now I'm going to peel the tape off. And to do that, you always want to score along the edge of the tape if you're using tape. Because if I start to peel this now, where there's been some paint that has overlapped, it could actually peel it off of the surface here. Paint, Mod Podge, anything like that usually takes about 28 days to cure. Once that happens, it'd be a lot easier to remove. I'm not waiting 28 days. So you can just go along the edge of the paint. You can also use a ruler to do that as well, if you're worried. I usually just think it's easier to go along the edge of the paint, but you can do it this way. Make sure it's right along the edge there. And just real gently, I'm not pressing hard, I'm gonna hold on to the upper portion. And it's good to go over it several times to make sure that it is scored, okay? And then just gently start it. If you notice that it's starting to peel up the other paint, well then you can go back and do it again. But you gently and always pull away from your design, because if you pull into your design and it starts to peel, it's going to peel a whole big chunk. So you just gently pulling away from your design, if this is the type of design that you have decided to create. Okay, so you should have a pretty crisp line once you are done. Okay. So what do you think? It's pretty good, right? This is my first time using this design. By the time you watch this, it may be one of my older designs, but right now it's one of my newer designs. So I really like how that's looking. Yeah. So I'm going to go ahead, and if you are someone who likes to stain wood, you could certainly stain the wood at the top. You could paint it a whole nother color. I really like the brightness of the natural wood, so I think I'm going to leave it natural. So having said that, I'm going to go ahead and paint a thin coat of Mod Podge over this natural wood to protect it. The other reason for doing that is because if I go ahead and stencil, it'll help me if I have to clean anything off. It won't be sunken into the wood. It'll be sitting on top of the Mod Podge that I can clean it off. And then once I'm done with the stenciling or hand lettering, I can easily seal it with another coat of the Mod Podge. So let me just get my trusty brush here. I need a name for this brush since I use it so often. All right, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of water to this because again, I have used this previously. It's also always a really good idea to pour your Mod Podge into a cup or into a paint tray. Don't dip your brush into your big jug of Mod Podge, because if you have some color transfer from your paint that's down on your piece, it will contaminate the whole jug. So like if you're using red and you get like a slight pink color, well then your whole jug of Mod Podge will have a pink tint to it. And I mean, if you like that, then great, go for it. But most people don't want tinted Mod Podge. So again, just a thin coat and watching for any little globs, little bits and pieces. I'm going to take this all the way up. Again, this will help seal it, make it water resistant, not waterproof. So you're able to hang it on a porch with like a screen door or a covered porch, or inside, of course. And if you're making this kit for yourself, then you know exactly what you'd like for your design to look like. If you are making it for someone else, then you would cater your design to them. But these kits are just meant to get you going on the basics. And I'm trying to do a design that doesn't require a lot of extra materials. Okay, so I just did a thin coat on there. Grabbing my heat gun again. Again, just use I was gonna say a curling iron. Don't use a curling iron. Use a hair dryer to dry it a little bit here. Sorry if a lot of the video is you watching dry stuff. You can certainly fast forward me through this. Again, moving. This coat will soak into the wood pretty quickly, so this drying process shouldn't take too terribly long. And that's the other reason you want to make sure that you're putting a thin coat of sealant or Mod Podge on the wood, whether you're staining the wood, whether you're leaving it natural, or if you're painting, because the paint will soak into the wood. So if you're painting this whole half, then that's fine. If you're not, you don't want it to spider out, like spider web out, and then you don't have a real crisp line. And again, if there's little clips and such, and that's okay, because this is a handmade item. All right, so there we go. So now we're all sealed up and ready to go with our wording. Like I said, I normally do hand lettering. For this though, I just wanted to show you how easy it is to stencil. So I'm gonna grab my stencils. I should have brought them over. Larger ones too, I'll be able to grab just in case, because I'm not sure, since this is a whole top piece here. Move my little containers out. I had a class and everybody in my class got a little thing of Mod Podge. So I had all these little containers full of, not even full, just with a little bit of Mod Podge in it, and I didn't want to let that go to waste. So I have stencils in my little box here. Like this one says welcome. And that'd be kind of nice. That fits really nicely actually, for the size that I have. And I can kind of eyeball it or measure if you prefer, off the line here, and kind of put the design. I can also, if you're someone who's kind of leery of stenciling, you can always trace inside with a pencil and then come in with paint markers and essentially hand letter it yourself, but you're following the tracing marks. That's also an option. Oh, here's another one. This one says hello. That's cute. I might like that better, just because it's very simple, and I feel like this is a very simple design. So I think I might use hello. Yeah, I like how that looks. You're also going to once again use the painter's tape. Again, it peels off easily. So I'm just going to turn it around so I get this centered up, and we want to take this down. Some people use the spray glue to hold these down. I've never had good luck with that, so I'm not going to use that method. I'm just going to make sure this is straight, and then I'm just going to put some tape on it, and just to hold it in place. You don't have to get crazy. You have to tape every single bit of it down. But I do like to make sure that I put tape, see where the E ends here, and it's pretty close to the edge, so while I'm stenciling this in, I might get it off the edge. I could easily clean that up because I have sealed the wood, but just to avoid that, I put the tape there so that if there's any spill over, it will go onto the tape. And the same here with the H and hello. I'm gonna do the same thing. And then up here, the top of the H. Just a little bit. I just like to be safe because, again, I'm a messy crafter. I'm going to put a little bit down at the bottom. I'm going to press it here. I am not going to press it hard onto the paint because this is new paint. It hasn't had a chance to cure. So if I were to press this down pretty heavily onto this paint, when I go to peel it off, it's going to peel the whole thing off. So we don't want to do that. So I'm only going to press it here to keep the design flat. Okay, so normally a little tip is that when you are stenciling, you usually stencil whatever color is behind it first, and that's kind of to seal it up. So if this was a white background, I would use white paint first and then use whatever color that I'm going to use over top of that. Because I don't have a color under here, I'm going to use white just because it is probably the closest that I can get to this. Either a white or a be brown maybe. I have like this classic caramel. I might add a little bit of white too. And it's just to help you seal it up a little bit. I never did need my spray bottle there. Okay. So I'm just going to go ahead and put a little bit of my caramel here. And then, did I bring a stenciling brush? Yes, I do. There are actual stencil brushes. And there is, so you can use a foam brush. You can use a stencil brush, which is just a brush with firmer bristles, or you can gently use a regular brush. I'll use this brush. I did have a larger one. I'm not seeing right now in all of my things. So I will use the smaller one to start. But because I have white out here already, let me pull this over here. I'm going to just get a little bit of the white. And yes, it has a little bit of blue mixed in. It's okay. And I'm just going to mix it with this to try to get a color similar to the wood behind it to do the first, I guess I didn't have as much white as I thought, to do the first layer of stenciled color. And again, don't have to do this. You could totally skip this if you're done and you're like, nope, not doing that. Well, then you can move on and put your string on in your holes, and you're done. If you want to know how to stencil, please continue to watch. Alrighty, what did I do? Okay, this. So I don't want a whole lot of extra. So that's a pretty close match with my wood. And again, this is just the first layer. When you are doing stencil, you just kind of do little circles, at least I do, because you don't want the paint to go under the edge. So you just want to make sure just a real nice. And each time you get a little bit more paint, you want to make sure it's not on there real thick. You do not want the paint to go under the edges of your stencil. You want a nice crisp line. And when you're down here at the edge, just be careful not to get it on this part. Like I said, we sealed it for that reason, so that if we had to clean it up, we certainly could. It's not crazy. But if we don't have to do that step, then that's better. You're just real lightly. Just gonna go back here. I don't think I got a whole lot here. There's a very fine line between getting too much and too little, but it's better to have to go back and put more, because if you put too much, you can't go back and take that off. And hopefully you're enjoying your kit. Hopefully it's relaxing. Just wanted to create a way that people who couldn't make it to my classes, whether you live too far or your schedule doesn't allow, we could do a class together. And depending on what design you choose to do for yourself, a great place to look for ideas is Pinterest. Although, caution, Pinterest is addictive. Can't tell you how many things I have saved because I'm gonna make that one day. I'm never gonna make it. There's just no way. But it's fun to look at. You can go there and get some ideas for door hanger designs as well. I might put another little piece of tape down here at the bottom. For some reason, this bottom edge is lifting up. I'm holding it down, and I don't mind getting my hands messy, as you know, but we want a crisp line here, so. And if you're wondering where to find my papers, you can find them online on my store, in my online store at www.13designart.com. And in person, I have them at the Outpost on Market Street in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania, or soon in 40 Fort at the Makers Marketplace. And that is where they currently are. If you're watching this years and years after I've made this, then I can't guarantee where they are in person. But check my website for sure. They will always be on my website. Okay. So this is drying pretty quickly. And you can see the color I chose very closely follows the wood. All right, so what color are we thinking? I think black would be too harsh for this. And I think white, although nice, might be still too light because this is such a light shade. What if I did like a navy blue? That might be kind of a nice complement to the blue down here. All right, I'm gonna wash out my stenciling brush. Clean it off. Yeah, let me see if I have any navy blue. If I don't, I'll make some. Oh, I do have some navy blue. This is an Admiral Blue. I might want to dumb this down just a little bit. Mute it down just a little bit because that might be a little too blue. Yeah. Get a little bit of the orange, mix it in. Because because I don't want it to be bright. I want it to be a softer version of a color other than black, because I just feel like the black would be way too harsh. And this is a nice, sweet kind of, but I don't want to use light blue because I feel like that'd be way too much light blue. All right, so let's start. Let's try to give the blue a try, and I've gotten this off of my brush as much as possible. Again, doing little circles, and if I have to go back over and do another coat, that is a-okay with me, because I'd like for it to be a nice, crisp line. I don't want to have it go under the edges of the stencil. So you really put a very, very little bit. I know it looks like I have a lot on here. I don't. I got most of it off. And I'm barely covering the color that I had underneath. So it's kind of like my first layer of blue that I want to get down. And again, when you're coming down to the edge, if you didn't put tape there, just be real cautious. You can find stencils fairly cheaply anywhere online, especially wording ones. You can find them at the big box stores. Pick a greeting or a saying for your sign that you like, if it's for your home or if it's for someone else, maybe something that they often say. It just personalizes it. It makes it nice. My design here, actually, I'd love to hang it on my front door, but I'm going to be using this as an example of my art kit of what people can make. And I'll do other tutorials later on down the road, just to give people more ideas of what they might want to create with the door hanger kit. And I keep going over here, I guess you can't really see what I'm doing. I'm just getting a little bit of the blue, and then I'm kind of tapping it off because I don't want it to be thick. I just find crafting just so relaxing and zen. And really, like I said, any little mistakes or things, like some of my bristles are falling out of my brush. This is an older brush. And they'll get stuck in my paint and they'll dry there. But it gives it that charm. It shows that it was handmade. So if I, miss it and oh geez, I didn't see that and it dried into the paint, it gives it a feel that you're not going to get with the mass-produced pieces. And I myself, I know that I prefer handmade stuff. I try to buy local and small business as much as possible because it's actually supporting someone's family and not a CEO's third, fourth, fifth home. So I really get a kick out of sometimes finding things like that, like bristles dried in or brush strokes or whatever it might be. I think that really gives it charm. And you know for certain it's handcrafted. This is where my stencil kept lifting up, so I'm just going to try to push it down. If I get a little paint under the stencil, so what? So what? I could touch it up, or I could just let it go. Let it be what it is. Let it be that charm, because it is a handcrafted piece. And again, just little circles, little tiny circles. You can see it starting to come to life, right? If you're hand lettering, because some people are really good at that, I can do hand lettering if it's real scripty, because that's more forgiving. Lettering that's a little bit straighter, like this is a little bit scripty, I could probably hand letter this. But if you're good at that, oh, kudos to you, because that is not something that I can do, the straighter, more block type lettering. So I'm just going to go ahead and put another quick coat down. Hope that you're not bored to tears with me yet. If this is not a step that you are doing, if you are using a wood cutout word, which I did have at Christmas time, I had like joy and holly jolly and stuff like that. You can certainly just use a glue gun or some sort of glue and glue that on. You could paint it first if you'd like. I might have got too much on that. There we go. And so you wouldn't be doing this step, which is fine. That's your design. Look at that. This is how old my brush is. It just came apart. I should probably put a spot of glue in there or get new brushes. Nah, the brush still works perfectly fine. I'll just put a spot of glue. Like I said, just little circles and a little bit of paint at a time. It's better to do layers and layers and layers. It's kind of like if you've ever spray painted anything, you know what happens when you put like one thick coat? It never dries. You usually get drips, right? We certainly don't want paint smushing out underneath, being just a smushed out mess, right? It's gonna look a lot better. It takes more patience, but it's gonna look a lot better if you do light coats. So that is what we're doing. And you're not pushing hard either. You're just gently doing your little circles here. A little too much, so I'm gonna dab it onto the paper towel. Don't wanna get, again, thin layers. And will I still have some that's squished out under? Possibly. There's a few spots that look a little suspicious to me. That's okay. If you're using the foam brush, that works well for some people. I just always have trouble keeping the amount of paint on the foam brush light. It just seems to really soak into the foam, and if it gets wet at all, then it's almost like a runny mess. So if you're good with the foam brush, that's great. Use that. I usually use a regular brush or the stencil brush like this. But it shouldn't be stressful. You should be having a good time. And if you're discovering, you know, you thought that you were not creative and you're discovering that, hey, maybe I kind of sort of am, then that is great. So you're just gonna finish by going around and making sure you have it all the way up to all the edges without squishing it under. And if you have to go back around and touch it up, that's okay as well. All right, and then once you're done, you're going to soak your brush. And then because we used the painter's tape, your stencil should very easily come up. Ooh, looks good so far. Knock on wood. I don't know. Very carefully, even if you haven't pressed it down hard against the new paint, you want to just be careful that it's not pulling up. Look how cute. Oh, this turned out really, really cute. What do you think? Do you like that? It looks very springy, right? Oh, I love that. I'm glad that we kept the natural wood with this particular design. I really like that. All right, so I'm gonna pull the tape off of here, and then I'm actually going to stick my stencil in the sink in some warm soapy water to soak for a couple of minutes, and then the paint should very easily wipe off. Don't ever try to scrub it because you'll end up tearing your stencil because it is just the thin plastic. So throw that into my pile back there and make sure I don't have any paint in my fingers when I pick this up. But what do you think? That looks pretty great. I like that. I'm glad we went with the dark blue. And we could even add some more little dark blue with this particular design. There's some dark blue here and down here. I could actually go in and add some other little, if I wanted to kind of tie it in a little bit better. But once this is dry, I'm gonna make sure that it's super dry because it's a darker shade, which right there is not. We're going to put one last coat of decoupage over top of this, and that'll seal the top. And then once we're done with that, we will put our cord on. So let me just grab my, just want to make sure this is nice. Normally I would probably let it sit overnight just to make sure that the darker paint is completely dried and sealed. I'm just going to do this real quick. Again, moving it, moving it, moving it. I think it's all dry. So I'm going to use, now the key with, was it this one? Which one was it? I don't remember which one I was using. Well, I'll just use this one and I'll pour a little bit in here because I think that some of that might be the gloss. I don't want a gloss. I'm not a fan of the gloss. Seal this up. Now, the key here, especially if it's fairly new paint, get my trusty brush here, is to not go over it and over it and over it and over it and over it, because that will cause some of the pigment to pull up, and we don't want that. We want to keep it nice and crisp. And there are some areas, I should lift this up so you can see, mine is not perfect. There's a little area there that's not, but I'm okay with it. I am okay with it. All right, so I'm gonna take my damp brush, and since I just poured this, there's no need to thin it out. I'm gonna start down here, and again, just do a thin coat. Again, this will make it water resistant. Nice thin coat without going over it a bazillion times, right? All the way out to the edge. Just a nice thin coat. Actually, go up on the edge too. Sometimes that happens. And I'm sure for this project I'll make a few of my tips of the day reels. I like to do that because just a quick little thing that people can watch and just give you some little tips to help with your decoupaging. Nice and thin. And I'm just going to take my finger, smooth it out, and like I said, you're going to get messy, and that's what happens. I'm going to throw that in there. I'm going to dry this. It's just got done running. I'm going to put it in a little bit higher fan. so it's going to take longer to dry. And I really like how this turned out. I really like how the navy blue looks. Very springy. I also like how yellow looks in the summer, but I think with the yellow it would have been too much with the lighter blue that we used. So I kind of like using the darker blue. It'll be seen from the street. And against that natural, if we had decided to stain it, maybe like a nice deep brown, then maybe we could have used a brighter color like yellow. But the options really are endless with this, and depending on which decoupage design you chose for yourself. But this is a nice spring design, for sure. If you're looking to host your own class with your friends, you want to buy a whole bunch of kits, send me a message. They do offer group pricing, if that is something you're interested in. Because I can package them up in the same box, as opposed to sending a whole bunch of different boxes, so it's a little bit more reasonable shipping. This is dry. It's a little bit in the middle there, it's not, but I did want to show you with the attaching the twine. So you received some twine in your kit. Mine is just on what do you even call that? It's not a bobbin. Anyway. So depending on how you want this to look, if you want your knot out the front, because that's kind of cute. If you want your knot in the back, you may do the knot out the front. This is kind of a cute look. So sometimes to get this in the back, you kind of have to twist it. And then I'm going to tie a knot in the front. Trim, make sure it's nice and tight. And trim the excess. And then you kind of, with the guess, measure how far you'd like for it to hang from wherever it might be hanging. That's a good distance, I think. So that was right about there. You can use ribbon if you prefer. I just like the twine. It goes with just about anything. And pull it nice and tight. And snip it. What do you think? It's really cute. And then in your box, you also have the option to add a little bow. There's some different things that you could add to it. Maybe if you're doing something you want to add a little. These are just from the Dollar Tree. They're cute. Or a little flower, something like that. You can do that at the top. I'm not seeing the bows though. They must not be in this box. But anyway, you can always add a little bow at the top to hang down, which will be really cute. And this is the completed door hanger. So thanks so much for joining me. Yours might look different than mine. I'm sure yours is absolutely beautiful, and it's your custom door hanger. Thanks so much for joining me to create your door hanger, and I hope you enjoyed yourself. And thank you again so much for supporting my small creative business. Again, you can find all of my decoupage papers and art kits at www.13designart.com. Thank you again so much, and happy creating!